Last week on CCTU, Global Director of the Drive to Zero campaign, Cristiano Fasagna, welcomed 8 nations as pledge partners in speeding commercial near and zero-emission vehicles worldwide.
We also welcomed guests, the Lion Electric Company and Natural Resources Canada, as they shared with us the tools, policies, and actions that are accelerating the zero-emission commercial marketplace around the globe.
Next week on CCTU, we're taking a closer look at integrated near and zero-emission ecosystems and what does it take to successfully deploy clean vehicles.
Are you interested in appearing in a future episode of CCTU? Well, email us at cctu@calstart.org and let us know how you can help us share the latest on industry trends, tools, and updates.
Well, hello again. Welcome back. Great to have you with us for this September 25th edition of CCTU, the Clean Commercial Transportation Update. I'm Bill Van Amberg, and with my colleague Alicia Gildy, we're your hosts. Alex Gaddis is running the webcast today. Casey Okazaki is our able producer, and Whitley Porter is managing our look, feel, and marketing. Some really sad news this past week, mixed with what was the huge and exciting news around Climate Week. But first, there was this powerful loss for all of us this last week when Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a giant of the court, passed away. We want to take this moment to really reflect on this. She is actually lying in state at this moment in our nation's capital. And I think just thinking about it, Alicia, it's amazing that this is the first woman to be so honored in the history of this nation.
Bill, I can't tell you how much her loss has struck a chord with me and so many of my women leaders in my life that I respect and work with and are friends with, and of course the women in my family that have made such an impression in my life. I was so touched by her loss and then reflecting about what she's done to inspire so many of us and really promoting women equality, that I even had to go out and buy a little memento of her to always remember her by and to have her at my desk so I can always remember all the great things that she's done in our society.
Yeah, I had some real great conversations with my daughter and my wife, obviously, around this after she passed. And it hits all of us very deeply, not just because of what she did on the court, but because of what she stood for in so many other ways, for equality for women and all people. So a real reflection there. We also, though, of course, had a huge excitement and momentum of Climate Week with announcements from major corporations, governments, and others around the world. And Alicia, I think that's been an astounding part of this week.
It's been an incredible week, Bill. This is a time of year where we all come together as nations and as a global community to look at how we can really address climate change. And we even had a special event that CALSTART was focusing on this week called Charting a Course for 30 by 30 to reduce emissions from medium and heavy duty vehicles and looking at what we can do to advance zero emission trucks and buses. And we had our own very regional director, Ben Mendel, who hosted an event this week. And I think it was a great opportunity for us to be looking at what are the solutions and actions we need to be driving in order to advance zero emission commercial transportation.
Yeah, it was very exciting. We also had one of our Drive to Zero workshops this past week where we were reflecting on the 8 new nations who have just joined that program as pledge partners around the world. But this week, California really had probably the topper, with the governor of California calling for a ban on combustion or gasoline engine vehicles by 2035. And that's going to be at the top of our rundown today, Alicia, as we walk through our great webcast.
Right. Well, Bill, I'm so excited. We have a wonderful lineup. And first, and we're so delighted to have Tyson Eckerle with the governor's office to share with us what came out of that announcement and how we're going to meet the goals, especially if we're looking at eliminating internal combustion vehicles by 2035. What's our plan to do that? So I'm really looking forward to talking to Tyson about that, Bill.
Yeah, and we'll also take a look at then what will it take to achieve those goals by talking with a couple of great organizations who are pushing forward to really make these ecosystems of success for energy, for infrastructure, for vehicles. So we'll have Emily Conway on with us from Pepsi Frito-Lay, and they're doing a fantastic project right now in Modesto, California. And also Tim Shannon, who is the transportation director at Twin Rivers Union School District. They are doing a fantastic job of integrating a very large fleet of electric school buses. So that's going to be at our rundown today of what we'll be taking on. But first, let's hear from everybody else.
That's right, Bill. Well, we like to share polls with everyone. And this one, we want to keep to our theme of integrated ecosystems. Where do you see the greatest potential for integrated ecosystems? Warehouse freight facilities, school bus fleet, mobility hubs, how about ports? What do you think? And we're going to be showcasing a couple examples today, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say.
It's good we don't put all of the above because that's too easy a choice for people. Right. But yeah, I do think that what we're seeing in the first launch with transit and school buses, but more and more we're seeing these freight facilities are becoming fantastic sites to really pull together a full system.
All right, Alex, what are the results? Okay, the first one here, warehouse freight facility, 39%, followed by ports. And then I would say followed by school bus fleets. Well, great. Thank you everyone for your participation. Bill, over to you in industry news.
Great. Well, let's launch right into it. This week, middle of the week, Governor Newsom came up with a major announcement, and it's interesting to see him flanked by Mary Nichols, the chair of the Air Resources Board, where he was calling basically with an executive order for a combustion ban in California. No more gasoline cars to be sold by 2035. Interestingly, and we'll talk about this, he also included in that executive order bans on burning fuel in commercial vehicles too, meaning trucks and buses, also starting in 2035 with a complete phase out for some classes. We'll talk more about that during this webcast. Michigan, though, also took a major step forward, one of the biggest steps in the Midwest, where the Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer had an executive order saying that they would be completely climate neutral by 2050. This is really one of the biggest movements by any Midwest state to date. Walmart also made a big announcement this week that it will plan to be 100% zero emission fleet by 2040 across all of its operations. This is about 10,000 vehicles, and it does include not just localized delivery vehicles, but all of their over-the-road line haul vehicles. That's a big commitment. We saw Pepsi this week also make a big commitment that they would be changing over to renewable energy at all of their facilities and renewable electricity by 2030. That's a really early target. This is all part of an accelerated internal plan to be climate neutral that Pepsi Frito-Lay has, and we'll talk more with Emily Conway about that coming up later in our webcast. Toyota this week actually came up with an interesting new product, or at least the potential for a product, and it's a fuel cell powered truck working with a partner, Denyo, that would also be able to generate electricity for emergency backup power, for resiliency and the like. These are topics we've been talking about in the last few weeks on the webcast, and it is interesting that Toyota is actually looking at a vehicle that would be able to power for not just hours, but days out of that fuel cell power device. And Nuvei and Bluebird have combined to actually add some really interesting capabilities to their school buses, which is two-way power transfer or vehicle-to-grid capability. The San Diego company Nuvei Corporation has been adding that to the Bluebird buses. We've seen some of the other bus makers do this, such as IC Corporation from Navistar. Finally, it's not just on the ground, it's up in the air. We've talked about this a lot, but Airbus is now signaling that they're going to be developing 3 different platforms for the feasibility and then the production of completely zero emission passenger aircraft that they could have in production by 2035. They would be using hydrogen as the fuel, and they're looking at 3 different designs, including that very novel design out in the lead, which is an integrated body wing design. So some tremendous steps coming out of Climate Week, huge announcements, but of course the governor's announcement is getting a lot of people's attention with this ban on combustion by 2035, Alicia.
That's right, Bill, and we're already getting questions coming in from our participants, eager to talk with Tyson, so that's really great. Thank you, everyone. Well, I am pleased to introduce Tyson Eckerle, who is the Deputy Director for the Zero Emission Vehicle Market Development for the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Tyson, so great to have you. Thank you for joining us with the announcement this week. It's just such a pleasure to have you and to make time for us because I know you're really, really busy. But did we miss any good tips from Bill's rundown on the significance of this event, the announcement this week? Maybe you can help us expand on it. And then also, what is it going to take, Tyson, in your mind, for us to meet the goal of eliminating or no longer selling combustion vehicles by 2035?
Well, thanks very much, Alicia, and thanks, CalSTART, for having me. This is a great opportunity. And I think, if anything, I would just start kind of with your last question, what's it going to take? This is really a team sport, right? It's the governor put out the goal, and the goal is now it's for all of us to work together, from wherever we sit, either in the government, in advocacy, or in industry. And of course, there's other classes that I should mention, but to pull this all together and get there. And I think really what the governor is trying to do is like, hey, it's no longer time to just talk about it, really have to do. And so I think the governor laid out, we're very clear what we need to do and why we need to do it. Now it's really focused in on the how, right? So looking forward, we're gonna be building out a strategic framework really for, we're calling our zero emission vehicle market development strategy to help pull all those pieces together so that we're all making that concerted effort to get where we need to go.
So I think one of the things that was really interesting is that the governor made it clear this was both for passenger cars by 2035, gasoline-powered cars mostly, but also for commercial vehicles. And he started to, it sounded like he was linking it with the ACT, the Advanced Clean Truck Rule. But this is pretty powerful to bring commercial vehicles under this same tent. What's the intent with that? What is the governor's vision there?
So I think, well, it's really to, if you look at why we're doing this, and why we're doing this is, it's climate change, but it's also air quality. And I think the commercial vehicle sector has probably the biggest impact that we can have in terms of air quality, especially in the communities that have been most impacted by our, air pollution. And so really it starts there. And so the challenge to all of us is to figure out how to make this happen, right? I think there's seen a lot of great leadership. I mean, just the announcements you went through earlier today gives us a lot of hope and excitement about being able to get there. It's going to take a lot of investment, a change in mindset. We're trying to do this while balancing, this is a great economic opportunity, but we also got to make sure that as we're pushing this forward, we're making sure that our, existing businesses can survive and thrive in this new environment.
Tyson, that's really good. And with the announcement this week, not too soon after, Governor Whitmer made a huge commitment and also executed an order to reduce carbon emissions across the state's economy with two great demonstrations of commitments to reduce climate impact and emissions from transportation across all of our industries. What signal does this send to other states and possibly other nations around the world?
I think, as you've seen in the past, and it's going forward, when California sets the bar, that it's the big gorilla in the room in a lot of ways where everybody else can kind of start moving forward. And so we've had great relationships with states. We have the U.S. Climate Alliance that we work through with, I believe it's 24 states, and it's bipartisan, which is really important to think. This is not a political, issue. It's really, it's about doing what's right for health and for our climate and for people, right? And so I think, as we pave the way, like our intention is let's make sure, bring all the states in as much as possible, ideally the federal government in as well. I mean, it's going to take all of us together to make this happen, but we're very proud of what Michigan's doing, and it's, we're looking forward to more states joining.
So Tyson, a couple of comments coming in from the attendees today who are excited about this, and of course had lots of technical questions. Maybe we'll have you answer some of them offline. But people are wanting to know, the governor alluded to, look, we are in tough times, but I know more funding is needed. We'll work on that in the budget. I mean, he was signaling a strong intent there, it sounds like, even in tough times.
That's right. I mean, I think, the way we're looking at it is, in multiple facets, right? You have a strong role for public funding, in grants, but there's also a strong role for private finance. And what we're trying to do is close the gap between those two. And a lot of times what happens, you have kind of the grant funding and leading towards private finance, but there's a hole in the middle. And so we're looking at, really aggressively at strategies. How do we bring and leverage more private funding in and, help de-risk the market? And part of the de-risking is the strong signal and the regulations. But the other part, we know we have to meet it with as much public funding as we can. The challenge, of course, is our budgets are really constrained, and we all know the COVID story and what happened to the state budget this year. So we have to be realistic. But so it's really, and it's not a whole lot of time when you think about 15 to 20, 25 years from now, depending on what target you're looking at. And so it's getting started now.
Absolutely. Well, Tyson, look, thank you so much for your time today. And I think you might, in the chat, there's some people asking questions about streamlining permitting and how do we get infrastructure on the road faster. I think those are great topics as we build forward. But thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyson.
Well, it's such a great announcement from the governor and the team in this historic and challenging next step. We're going to obviously be working with the governor and Tyson and that team at GoBiz to really push the success here. Really want to pivot now, though, to some examples of people who are starting to make it happen and showing us what it will take to actually scale up to these ecosystems of energy systems that it will take to charge and fuel the vehicles of the future. We're delighted to have with us today Emily Conway, the Fleet Sustainability Manager of Pepsi Frito-Lay. Emily, first of all, welcome.
I'm so glad to be here and talk about everything we're working on.
Well, and let's start. You guys are going to 100% renewable energy, but we really want to talk today about your exciting project in Modesto. We're obviously very honored to be a part of that, but you've really been shifting your whole energy system there at that facility for vehicles, the facility, your operations. Can you guys just, first of all, just give everybody a sketch of what is that project? What does it consist of? What are you trying to do and who are the key partners?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a project that was funded through CARB and through California Climate Investments, I guess starting in late 2018, and we've been working on it since. And the idea is to completely transform the Modesto plant. And so let's say back in late 2018, it was 100% diesel, and by the end of the project, it will be 0% diesel in terms of the fleet that's operating out of that site. But it's not just a fleet project, as you mentioned, Bill. It also has some really exciting facility aspects. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it enables us to test the way that these interactions are occurring and how we can complete projects that not only focus on the fleet, but also their interactions with facilities. And as we move into electrification, that conversation becomes more and more important. And so this project is really the project that we're using to learn, to look at how can we implement solar, battery storage, electric forklifts, electric box trucks, electric tractors, as well as compressed natural gas equipment that's fueled by renewable natural gas, essentially looking for a holistic, systemic solution for emissions reductions at a site where we're no longer relying on the traditional conventional fuels of the past.
Emily, I am so pleased that you're on our program today. And when I was speaking earlier about women that inspire me in my life, you're one of them. I always love seeing you and seeing you participating in events.
You're the best. Thank you so much. I also, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was such an inspiration, and I'm really glad that y'all brought her up today because I truly believe that she changed the world. So.
I agree. Well, thanks for all the good work you're doing on this project, and it's super impressive. And then with this site deploying multiple vehicle technologies and off-road technologies, maybe share a little bit about the learnings in terms of how you're integrating infrastructure and how it's all kind of connecting, and what is it going to take to support all of these advanced technologies that you're deploying on site?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always start the question with what do we need the trucks to do and then build from there. So that the first priority is always we have to make sure everything we do will work for what we need it to do, right? But with that in mind, that kind of integrated solution is where we're starting to look at how do we do things better? How can we leverage these new technologies to actually improve our processes? And Modesto is a great example of where, in this on the screen, you can see all of the different technologies with all the amazing partners that we're working with. I definitely want to shout out to all of the awesome, manufacturers and companies, and of course, CALSTART is a part of our project as well, working on the data collection. But the data is almost the key, right? we look at how do we operate these vehicles, what do we need from them, and then how does that integrate into how we're currently operating our site today. And so we're getting some really exciting results in terms of, you know, what we're hoping to kind of share with the industry in terms of, you know, how these are operating within our facilities and what that means not only for this site, but for future sites as well.
Hey, on that point then of future sites, because this is exciting in many ways, this is not just regulation driven for you. You have really strong internal sustainability goals at Pepsi Frito-Lay. So do you view what you're doing at Modesto as a template or just a learning site? Does this become kind of what you roll out elsewhere in your system?
So I work on the PepsiCo team, so that means that we are over both the Frito-Lay side of the business and the Pepsi side of the business. So this is a perfect template for as we move forward with Frito-Lay sites. Pepsi is a little bit different just in terms of the way that we do business, but you're absolutely right. We're using the learnings from this site to figure out how to do electrification on a large scale at not just one site or two sites, but pretty much, you know, all of our sites in the future, because we have to align not only with regulatory requirements, but also all of our internal goals in terms of reducing our emissions and really meeting the expectations of our customers.
Emily, super impressive in the leadership of PepsiCo to really be thinking forward and moving forward, really progressive strategies to reduce emissions and really help the industry with sharing templates of how it can be replicated and how it can actually work, and realizing that sometimes it doesn't take one fuel to make it work. Sometimes you need an introduction of multiple fuels in order to help meet your emission reductions, as well as to make sure that you're keeping an operation in business. So thank you so much. Really loved hearing from you, loved hearing an update about the project. Looking forward to seeing where it's going to be replicated and go next. So we'll make sure to bring you back on our program again soon.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Well, and you are changing the world too, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, great. And we have another great partner that we're bringing to our discussion today, Tim Shannon, who is the Director of Transportation with the Twin Rivers Unified School District. Tim, so great to have you. And you too are working on an integrated ecosystem. And first, I want to just hear from you. In 2017, you deployed your first zero-emission battery electric school bus. How's that going, and how's your fleet growing? And tell us a little bit more about your project.
So we'll just give you just a tiny bit of background. We started out this project in 2017. You know, the interest was starting to develop in 2016. We have been running electric school buses for almost 4 years now. Our initial deployment was 16 electric school buses. And of course, we used multiple technologies, lithium ion batteries in the Lions, and in the Transtex, we used nickel sodium. All 16 of those buses are currently running. We have added an additional 14 buses to that mix. So we have a total of 30 electric buses now. We are moving forward this year. We should receive another 22 electric buses. With HFIB money and some local monies, and then an additional 5 from our CTE grant that we received. So we're moving to update our infrastructure so that we can actually deploy 82 electric school buses altogether, which will be 90% of our fleet, which has a huge benefit for kids and community because, you know, it reduces all that particulate matter in the air. And, you know, it's not only for the kids riding the bus, but it's the community that we're driving those buses in.
Hey, Tim, so you know, it's really not only the numbers of vehicles, so you're up to a really large deployment of vehicles, but you've had to rethink your system as a whole energy ecosystem in terms of what you've brought in from the grid, solar, setting up all your charging. How did you approach this? How did you kind of set up this growth so you could expand to 60 and eventually 80 buses?
Well, fortunately, we have a really good partnership with our utility, SMUD, and they have really helped us move along and have been a really close partner. So with that being said, they're gonna bring in even some additional power and help us grow our our facility. We're gonna bring in at least another megawatt of power, and then along with that growth, we're looking at different technologies to offset cost of electricity, which it now is actually about 80% less expensive to run electric bus versus a diesel in fuel costs. But it's all about partnership, and it's all about looking forward and never looking back. Only look back at your failures or your challenges, and then doing as much as you can to advance that technology.
Well, Tim, you guys are doing a great job. And I have to say, one of my very first projects was retrofitting school buses with diesel emission control technologies, and to see where we're going now with electrifying our bus fleets and really eliminating emission impact on our children. And then, of course, you guys are introducing some really great strategies in terms of vehicle grid to integration, which is really impressive. Where do you plan to go next? And are you having your peers, other school districts that are coming to you saying, how are you doing this? And possibly taking some of your good learnings and moving them forward?
So in speaking with other people, I speak to a lot of people, and my team, they speak to a lot of people worldwide, but even locally. The idea is this is a model that can be replicated everywhere. That's what we're trying to do. We're a school district. We're supposed to help teach people how to do things, and advance the students and add that. We have classes within our district to help kids learn about electrical technology and grow into a career around it. But it's being a model is really been the best thing for us, in the fact that people want to listen and they want to learn. One of the things you were asking about was that new innovative integration. We are working with SMUD to do a level 2 Vdg integration that's going to start. We just now got hardware in and buses capable to do it. We're going to start that project and move forward with also a DC vehicle to grid project, because we don't want it to just be a project though. We want it to be the way you do things. We want vehicle to grid to spread everywhere, because it helps offset that cost of those buses. And then we're going to add, the solar aspect to it and battery backup. And then, of course, charge management. We're working with a company to do a massive charge management project to reduce the cost of energy and to reduce that load on the grid.
It's fantastic. We definitely always use your example when we're talking to other fleets, because you're right. They not only talk to you, they talk to us about who's doing it right, and we often steer them to you. You guys have been a great template.
Yeah.
Just glad to help.
Tim, well, thanks for taking good care of our kids, and thank you for being a role model and sharing your best practices outward. We look forward to bringing you back on our program. And it's been a great panel lineup today, Bill. I'm really thankful for Tyson, Emily, and Tim. You all have been wonderful. Thank you for bringing great value to our discussion today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Great. Well, Bill, I think we have a highlight that we want to share in terms of an upcoming event that we will be having for our HTUF program. Alex, if we want to share that slide. All right. So on October 20th, HVIP is celebrating its 20th anniversary and Vehicle Electrification Industry Day. So do learn more about that event and check us out, and please join us. Also, if you want to check out the event that we had this week for Climate Week, we are going to be featuring that on our website. The whole recorded program will be available for your viewing, so please check us out on our website, calstart.org. All right, Bill, over to you.
Well, that's great. And I think that HTUF 20th anniversary is exciting. I was there from the beginnings of HTUF, and now we're working with the U.S. Army, as we talked about just about a month ago on this webcast, on setting the spec for their new vehicle. So that's what that Industry Days is all about. Very exciting. Well, that does bring us to the close of another CCTU. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, we do post each week's edition on our website, so do check it out. That's at calstart.org/CCT update, and you can watch any of the past episodes that we've had, and there have been some really good information there. Next week, we're going to take a look at the emerging pathway and case for hydrogen as part of this complementary system needed to achieve zero emissions everywhere. So please join us for that. You know, the bar has really been raised this past week. Gasoline car bans in California, commitments to zero emissions by major fleets, carbon neutrality in Michigan. We need to keep this momentum moving forward on these issues, and together we can do it. Together we can change transportation and the world for good. So thank you for joining us. For Alicia Gildy, I'm Bill Van Amberg, and on behalf of all of us who work in commercial vehicles at CalSTART, be safe, take care of yourself and take care of others, and stay connected. And please make Friday your CCTU day. We'll be here bright and shining for next week at this same time. See you then.